Before we get started, a quick word from our sponsor, which is me. I wanted to let you know that I am leading workshops for teams, and it can be done virtually via Zoom and in person. And if you're interested in having a conversation about team effectiveness and about how the assumptions we bring and the mental models and the maps of reality that each team member brings to a team, they can either lead to really great morale and productivity or constant conflict, or what I see most often, avoidance of conversations just to avoid the negativity and argument and repetition of stuckness that I often see. If you're interested, you can find me at askhowie.com. That's the professional site for my work. And there's a form you can fill out, get in touch, and we can talk. Okay, today's episode. I met David Fish, or Fishy, as he prefers to be called, through a networking group out of Australia. You might notice I'm interviewing a lot of Australians these days. And his thing is standing out. As you'll see, he's wearing a bright yellow jacket, and his name, Fishy, and he's a pilot and uses that in his marketing and the construction of his material. And he's really interested in this idea of how much we need to stand out and how much we need to fit in. And for each of us, where we're erring. Are we going too much one way or the other? And what I thought was going to be just a really great conversation for all of us turned into an incredibly valuable coaching session for me. So I come across, I think, a little vulnerable here, sharing things that I tend not to share publicly because I forgot I was doing a podcast. I thought I was just getting coached by this amazing human being. So I hope you find it valuable as well. Whichever side of the stand out, fit in line you tend to cross over too often and with consequences. So without further ado, David Fish, welcome to the Plant Yourself podcast.
Howie, it is wonderful to be here. Good morning.
Yeah, I'm excited for this conversation. I've gotten to know you a little bit, and excited for the wisdom and perspectives about something, especially like sometimes the conversations are for my audience, and sometimes they're secretly just for me. And I have a feeling this is going to be one of them, secretly just for me, and other people can get whatever value they like. But it's well, why don't you introduce yourself, and then we can kind of ease our way into what I really want to learn from you.
Sure. No, I'm delighted to be here and looking forward to the conversation as well. I think we all, these conversations are fantastic because I think we all learn something as we have these conversations and we delve into the things that our brain just surfaces when we're in an immersive conversation like this. So yeah, looking forward to it. So my background's advertising strategy, and I've got a lifetime of working on how brands and companies show up in the world. And more recently, I've ventured into the space, when I say more recently, sort of 3 to 5 years, how we show up in the world. And that's really where all of my work sits now, how we show up, how we actively shape our presence, how companies show up and shape their presence in the world and form meaningful memories around what they do, right down to kind of what I call the functional end, which is how ideas show up and how we can communicate what we want and get our important messages across to the right audience.
Yep, I love that. And for people who are not watching the video, you're wearing a yellow jacket or jumper or something, but is that your signature color?
Yes, it is. So I have two colours, a blue, which is not dissimilar to the books above me, and a yellow. And then my two signature colours, always very bright. So part of how I show up is in bright colours and expressing that sort of bright individuality. So, and we may even get into it. I'm quite big on people finding their signature icons, the little cues that signal that that's you that someone's talking to.
Ooh, that sounds like a fun thing for me. I love sort of physical manifestations of ideas. So that I'm going to make a note that we're going to find my icon. I'll get some free consulting out of this.
Awesome.
So I mean, showing up, it feels like it's very different for a company that's advertising and an individual, but maybe it shouldn't be. I was in marketing for years and years, and there was always a tension between, like, let's find the true essence of this company
and let's make up something crazy and fun or differentiating. Like how do you think about, first of all, like if you want to show up, like what part of you shows up and why? Like how do you begin to think about showing up?
So let's unpack a couple of those pieces. So I think firstly, the parallels between, I guess, a brand and us as people. The major parallel is we feel as people when things are disingenuous. We feel when there's inconsistency, and we feel when there's incongruency in how things are manifesting themselves. And that is true of whether it's a company that's putting itself out in the world and we feel that the messages and the identity don't line up, and we feel the same thing with people. And so, and the reason for that is we are people, and we engage in this. Our brain is, we have one brain, and it doesn't differentiate between a box on a shelf and a person we're talking to in terms of how it's processing the information it's receiving. It feels those same nuances where things, you pick up a box and it feels premium, you open it and the thing inside feels cheap and you feel cheated. When we see someone on LinkedIn and we see that profile and we're like, wow, an amazing person. And you meet them, you're like, that's not the person whose profile I read, and you feel cheated. So the same feelings are evoked when we have those experiences. And behind that sits the same kind of motivations. When we show up in a way that isn't true to who we are, people feel that. And one of the challenges that we have is that a lot of what we're forced to do to fit in is to manufacture things. And we feel that. We feel profiles online that aren't authentic. We feel people when we meet them who aren't the same people that we've engaged with in online conversation. And that's particularly true in that sort of early stages of recruitment. We want to put the best version of ourselves out in the world. We've done the personal branding exercise. And actually what we've done is we've created the persona of the person we want to be, not the person that's inside. And the person sitting opposite us feels that. And it's a real challenge then for the brain to reconcile, well, why are these signals not lining up? And the phrase I use is we feel fake fast. And it takes a while. The brain just picks it up, right, straight onto it. And then it takes a while for it to process and figure out, well, why isn't this working for me? And so the parallels between brands and humans are the same in the sense that we are wired to receive and process information the same. And brands are created by people. Companies are positioned by people, and they have the same fears and insecurities that we have as an individual. So often what you'll see in a brand manifesting when it's going wrong is the fears and insecurities of the individuals trying to project something out in the world, which is trying to cover something up.
There's a difference between being inauthentic and being aspirational, though. Like, I feel like I definitely, like, I want to put my best foot forward. Like, I want to be, thoughtful and considerate and compassionate. And there are plenty of times during my day when I'm not. But,
Yep.
So how do you think about sort of, navigating that channel?
Absolutely. So 100% and I guess there's a place in when different things show up. So aspirational, having a vision board, having things to work on, attributes you want to step into, people you aspire to be, absolutely fantastic things to have and to work with. But they shouldn't become part of your identity right now. And that's where the aspirational you can become the inauthentic you in the moment, because the projection, and this is where I have a big issue with personal brands, when personal branding goes wrong. The concept of personal branding is fantastic. The execution of it, when it becomes that aspirational brand that someone creates and puts out in the world, then the person I meet and the person I'm experiencing are not the same. And so that inauthentic feeling is the thing that we feel. And that actually erodes trust. One of the things we feel in trust is the authentic nature of someone showing up. And when we don't feel that authenticity, when we don't feel that genuineness, then that erodes our ability to connect with that person.
So I'm thinking about environments where I have felt that erosion of trust, and one of the big ones. So I was part of the online revolution after the .com crash of 2000, of people discovering that the internet was a direct marketing medium, and there was this huge thing, people selling programs and courses and tutoring on how to make money online, and people who would make a lot of money pretending to be successful online. until they could get you to buy their course, which made them actually successful online. And I have felt that sort of as a coach, as a business consultant, that if, like this thought in my head, like if people knew how much I was really making, they wouldn't pay any attention to me. So I have to sort of act, not to the point where I'm going to rent a Ferrari, but I kind of have to act like, I'm more flush than I am, or we're going to go out to a meal and I'm going to be like, here's my credit card. Yes, get the wine. Yes, get the fancy after dinner drink. And then I'm like looking at the bill later, sweating.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's no question where things like that, we're drawn to successful people. Right? So people who want to be successful are drawn to people who they see to be successful. The risk is that you go from the beautiful restaurant into the shiny car, and then the car pulls up at the house that's falling down. And if someone sees all of those scenes in sequence, then they're like, hang on, this doesn't work. And so that, to your point, there's a limit to how much we can create an image and it be a sustainable image that people don't start to see. It's like the movie set. When you see the movie set and it's beautifully edited and it's on the screen, you wouldn't know it's not a real street. But if you go to the lot where it's being filmed and you look slightly left, you see all the scaffolding holding it up and you realize it's just a facade. And the longer the facade is put out into the world, the greater the risk of someone peering around the side and going, hang on a minute, it's just a facade. And so that's the risk. And I think, the time you talk about in the online world, it kind of worked because everything was online. But if you met the person who you were doing the online transaction with, then you might go, oh, now my radar's picking up on things that don't quite, that sense of things not being quite right, because now all the pieces are not joining up. So, and this is one of the risks with the online world that we operate in, is that you can be superficial online for a period of time and get away with it. But we don't exist in just an online vacuum.
Do you find that, we've had sort of 25 years of many people being online, that it's kind of changed the way we interact in person in terms of trust or suspicion?
To an extent, but also not. So if you look at the science, so the two major drivers of our behaviour, particularly when it comes to showing up, are the need to belong and the fear of rejection. And both of those have been ingrained into us for over 100 million years. So they go back to our tribal times. The need to belong was how we survived in a tribe. What we learned was that in the tribe we could survive. We could hunt together, we could cook together, we could mate, and the tribe was successful because we stayed in that tribe. The minute somebody was ousted for that tribe for whatever reason, they didn't survive because they were no match for the woolly mammoth or the saber-toothed tiger. So we quickly learned that rejection meant death. And that's why we fear rejection so much. It's our primal instinct. It's literally a primal fear of being ousted from the tribe and not surviving. And we need to belong, and we want that cohesion of being in a tribe. So if you go, well, that's been around let's call it 100 million years, and we've got 25 years of internet, the internet hasn't yet had the chance to really shape our behavior in the way we might give it credit for, versus those ingrained tribal behaviors.
Well, I guess if the behaviors are ingrained, we're still navigating them through environments. So, like, one of the things I've seen. So I was not a popular kid in school. I was very nerdy, bookish, interested in things that other kids were not interested in, and I felt very alone. I see my kids having the same tendencies and being part of groups, for all around the world. And there's I keep getting surprised at how specific you can be about, what you're geeking out over, and finding a tribe of people. So I wonder, in some ways, maybe it's easier to show up in, flying your freak flag, because there's a group of people that you'll belong to, even if most of the world, won't connect with you that way.
100%. I think that is true. And I also think so yes, you can find a niche tribe. You can find those tribes which before, in the playground, they may have existed, but they were super hard to find. Now, if there's 2 of you in a playground, you can make that 1 million quite quickly online in a global community. So every niche has the ability to be a tribe. I also think online there is the reality that you don't have to show up as much. You can in part show up, and you can use filters, and you can have a little bit more of that persona that protects you from fully showing up. Whereas in the real world, that's where, and it is that transition. I think we've all felt that from someone you've had an interaction with. Even right now, we're both sitting talking to each other. You could be 4'6" or 7'2". I've got no idea. And so little things that would allow me to place you in situations are not visible and tangible. So the brain isn't able to process those things, so that when we meet in person, suddenly the brain's processing and going, well, is that the person I was talking to online? Does it all match up? Does it all make sense? Hang on a minute. Why is their skin tone different? Why is the lighting different? Why are they talking different? The brain is very adept at processing all of those things subconsciously. And that's where we get these feelings of this incongruency of, well, when they're online, they were like this, and now in person, they're like that. Now, if we never met in person, well, that trigger doesn't happen, because we just get used to this is our interaction. This is our relationship.
So I'll tell you a little story of something that happened to me this week. I reconnected. So we're both part of the thought leaders community. So I'm new there. So I'm trying to do everything I can to follow instructions and grow my business. And one of the things was reach out to people that I've worked with and, collaborated with in the past. And I connected with a guy. I hadn't talked to him in about 10 years. And we were chatting about this and that and like, what's his business? And he had mentioned he had done this really valuable online diagnostic called from Wealth Dynamics. And I hadn't heard of it. I had heard of it because Matt Church talked about it and just sort of mentioning it as an example of something. So I was like, oh, okay. So I did it. And, the idea is like there's 8 different archetypes of wealth creation, which could be money or value or whatever. And not a complex test, just you sort of answer 25 questions, this or that. And what I discovered from the test, which I didn't like or believe, that my number one attribute, my big one, was called star, like center of attention, leading the show, sort of Oprah, Richard Branson, like the face of the brand. And I'm like, no, that's not right. I'm a creator and I'm a supporter, which came in 2 and 3. But as I sat with that, I'm like, oh, there's something here for me, right? Because I've had this podcast. This is going to be like, close to the 600th episode. And I've always defaulted towards promoting other people, shining a light on other people. And like this test kind of, and my friend, when I told him, he says, yeah, I knew that all along. I said, but I've never done that. So how do I think about that there's this element in me that says like my basic archetype is to be out in front and leading, and I've never done it. And I've always sort of been behind, most comfortable behind somebody else. Like I'd be your co-author. I'd appear on stage with your blessing as opposed to sort of stepping up. What comes to you when you hear like a story like that?
So it suggests that this is the power of the outside feedback. So it's a survey as opposed to a person, but your friends have validated it. So often what people see in you is not what you see in yourself, because they have this amazing perspective. Mm-hmm. So they're feeling something that you're not necessarily intrinsically, what you are intrinsically aware of it, but you're. So there's a part of you that is wired to want to stand out. The fact you're doing a podcast, you're 600 episodes in, there's part of your standing out profile is to be larger than life, is to be seen, it's to be on stage, it's to be those things that survey's picked up. But you, through what the story you shared earlier, around being the nerd at school, being the nerd, being seen, probably not the most well-regarded, has then forced you to fit in. And so to be in society in the way that feels comfortable, you've suppressed the star part of you. And the way to deal with that is to feel like you're in the background, you're the co-pilot, not lead and not the main star in the movie. But you're wired to be the main star. But over the years, you've got used to suppressing that to be comfortable fitting in. And fitting in is the dominant and most comfortable style for us. The risk of fitting in is we give up some of the things that we should be standing out for. So some of the attributes of you that make you shine are now dulled down to conform to what you've been taught through school. And a lot of this is shaped in school in our early years, has shaped you to feel like they're not things that you should be exhibiting in public. And so they get suppressed. But what this survey and what your friends intrinsically feel in you is, no, but that's who you are.
Wow. I got chills because like you're a great coach. Like you heard two different things 15 minutes apart and immediately put them together.
They're connected. They are connected because that playground, the way you talked about that versus the way you talked about this. And if you watch this back and watch your body language when you talk about the two, and the quiet tone of being the kid in the playground suggested that that kid in the playground was wrong. And then when you talked about the star, you illuminated, and you, the Howie of today, came out. And so somewhere between those two experiences is the experience of suppressing the kid in the playground to fit into the school environment. And what people are seeing in you is, no, there is the star in you.
Wow. Because I mean, the irony is it never worked. like I didn't turn myself into a popular kid.
But maybe you were, and you are, but for who you are, not for the popular view of popular kids. Yeah.
So that's really interesting because I can feel like, okay, so I have some prediction of danger, right? That hasn't been like totally like I'm not an accountant sitting behind a desk, never coming out in the light. I'm out there, but there's a thermostat, and the minute my profile rises above that, it shuts off the energy.
Yeah, there's the fear of rejection. If I go too far, if I step out too much, I will be told that I'm too out there. And so then you go, oh, actually, no, this is getting risky. I'll stop here. And that stopping here is kind of staying in the circle of safety of fitting in. But the circle of safety of fitting in suppresses your ability to be seen, which is when you stand out. And this is all about balance. This is if you think, I look at it in three lenses. You've got fitting in, standing out, and speaking up. And each of them has a dark side. If we fit in too much, we become invisible. We become defined by title. We become lost in the world, and we attach our identity to things we don't own, like job titles. If we stand out too much, we're seen as being loud and out there. And if we speak up too much, we're seen as being outspoken. So each of them, and it's unusual that it's not the most common is to fit in, because that is the safe place to go. That is how we avoid rejection. It's how we move towards that feeling of connection. It's where we think we can get to being accepted because we blend into the group. But by doing all of those things, instead of getting closer to feeling belonging, we actually just disappear. And people then start to say, well, actually, you're hard to get to know because I can't figure out who you are, because there's bits of you, and there's bits of Harry that shines. And then I see this other person over here and I'm like, oh, I can't reconcile these two slightly different people. There's moments of stardom, and then there's moments of, no, I'm the co-pilot. And that's that again, this is what people sense that. And that's when you said to people, I've been told I'm the center of attention, I'm the star. They're like, yeah, we feel that. We just, there's little glimmers of that. And they sense that.
So is one way to tell like how to navigate all three based on energy? Because there's times where I feel just exhausted. Like being me is just like a really, it's like a badly designed job, right? Like not enough off time, not enough compensation or motivation. Other times, like being me is just like awesome.
Yeah. Energy definitely. And also the biggest challenge with all three is that we generally don't go through life thinking about it and looking for it. And so part of the reason I'm focused on doing the work I'm doing, and the next book is about this topic, is to have this conversation where people just stop and think about it and go, okay, in this moment, how am I being? What are my behaviors? Am I trying to conform to all of the norms? Am I dressing like everybody else? Am I speaking like everybody else? Even though speaking like everybody else, I feel is exhausting. I feel uncomfortable. Am I hiding parts of my personality? I could have put on a jacket. I could have worn a white shirt, but it's not who I am. So I'm sitting here in a white t-shirt with a yellow top because that's who I am. And it's comfortable for me and it's minimal effort because my wardrobe is blue t-shirts, white t-shirts, blue tops, yellow tops. And so that's a whole bunch of decisions taken care of. And that's my identity on a bunch of hangers. I can just grab that and I don't have to worry about, I might wear a suit jacket if I'm on stage. Because there is a degree of being relatable to the audience that we need to factor in. But it is exhausting. So if you're noticing those energy shifts and it's the triggers to then go, how am I showing up? How am I being in this moment? And what's triggering me to be like that? Why do I feel like I have to dress like everybody else, even though I'm super uncomfortable wearing a shirt and tie? I'm in this office environment. I hate being in this environment. I feel constrained wearing a tie. And yet for the last 20 years, I put a shirt and tie on. Mm-hmm. Why am I doing that? Why does that feel uncomfortable? Having that, or bringing that awareness to those feelings is how we start to notice what we're giving up, what we're trading. And it's not that we can always be totally outspoken, completely loud, and we got to get that balance right. But typically we are controlled and managed and moved by the environment far more than we are by purposefully showing up. So starting to notice that energy, if something's draining, if an environment is draining, then there's something going on. And it's time to step back and go, okay, who am I being? Does this serve me? Does this serve the people around me? And what's my behavior in this environment? When am I center stage Howie? And when am I quiet, reserved, not feeling quite myself, feeling slightly uncomfortable Howie?
Yeah.
And what's triggering the difference between those two people?
Yeah, with the word that comes up for me is permission, right? So if I'm on stage or I'm leading the workshop, right, then it's like the role that I step into. And we talked about before a couple of weeks ago about this idea of holding on to identities or being loose with identities. Like if you give me the mantle or the microphone and you say, go dazzle them, like I can be charming, funny, witty, spontaneous, but like there's a networking group that meets in town and I go and I, sitting on my shoulder watching myself, I'm nice and I'm interested in other people and I'm good at asking questions and I'm not really enjoying myself. I'm kind of bored. I'm kind of like forcing myself. And like, I wonder what, like, if I just showed up and juggled, or if I showed up in a balloon hat or something like that, but there's definitely, I think as you pointed out, there's definitely a fear.
Yeah. And that's the piece then. So you now got awareness of how you're showing up. And I'd say the balloon hat's a good idea as an extreme, not a good idea in reality, but it's a good idea to go, well, what's the extreme version of how I'm being? Now, who do I want to be in that situation? So when we play with extremes, what it does is it breaks us away from if the way we're behaving currently is one extreme. If we go to the other extreme, we can find a place in the middle that we're comfortable with. So going from I'm totally conforming to the environment and I feel really uncomfortable and I'm kind of happy being in the corner facing the wall drinking on my own, to I'm going to turn up with a balloon hat and juggle, to where's the real Howie and finding that center. And so yeah, there's a fear. So you've got awareness now of, on a stage when someone's given you a microphone, you've been given permission to shine. You've been given permission to be center stage, and you're super comfortable doing that. Why in the networking group can't that Howie or a version of that Howie show up in that same way? And is it because now you're not on the stage, you're in the group, there's a chance for someone to say something directly to you, whereas on a stage you have the microphone gives people control, you can manage a heckler, get a laugh for managing a heckler, like a comedian. There is something that then is where, so once you've got the awareness, then you can explore what is the fear, because there will be a fear.
Yeah.
There will be a fear that is putting a lid on, and therefore causing that energy drain between who you are and who you want to be in that moment. And here's the irony: who the people in that room want to meet. Right? The people in that room want to meet the Howie they saw on the stage, come into that room and have a conversation with them. And then what they see is a Howie who doesn't want to engage with them, who's bored and doesn't want to be there.
Right. And I think what I'm trying to present is, well, you know, he may be on stage, but he's very humble, right? He's not better than you.
Yeah. And that might be then the process is, I've got to dial that person down to be acceptable in this room.
Yeah. I think that's
fit into this room. I can't be that person, but that's rubbish.
Yeah. And because I think that, the way I work with people on their fear, I can't do it for myself necessarily, but like as I put Howie over on the side and look at him and think of him as a client, it's very clear to me, like the fear is not a fear based on what's going to happen in that room. It's a fear based on what happened in 5th grade.
Yeah.
Right.
That's it.
So there's when you say like, what are you afraid of? Like nothing. There's nothing like that could happen in that room that would particularly bother me or affect me, but the part of my brain that is 200,000 years old hasn't gotten the message.
No, there is something that happened in that playground, probably multiple times. Multiple things were said. So I have the surname Fish. Having the surname Fish is a great reason to be bullied. Now I now. If my email signature is fishy, one of my logos is fishy, I have a hat with fishy on it because now I've claimed that back. Part of my signature icons, part of my identity is to reclaim my name. But you don't just do that overnight. No. So there's things in our past that until we recognize, and you're exactly on the right path, is there's nothing in that room. There's no hidden snake in the box. There's no one in the room that's trying to take you down. But the brain is going, this is like the schoolyard. There's a bunch of people in this room and something might happen like it did when I was in 8th grade. That thing that happened then, that embarrassing moment where I felt shame, might happen here. And the brain then goes, awesome. What we need to do is protect ourselves. We need to do everything we can to avoid that situation happening here. Because when that happened there, I felt terrible and I don't ever want to feel that again. So what are we going to do? We're going to do everything we can not to stand out. And everyone in the room is going, where's Howie? I want to meet the guy who did that keynote the other week. It's amazing. And Howie isn't there today because Howie can't show up because the brain's going, no, this could go horribly wrong.
Yeah. I've definitely gotten that feedback a lot when I'm a part of a group and I'm new to the group, that like a year later, people come up to me and say, you're funny. Like they're totally shocked and surprised that I'm not boring.
Yeah.
Because I presented boring for months.
Yeah. Or reserved.
Reserved.
You're if Howie's this big, you're going into the room this big.
Yeah.
And you're getting comfortable and allowing yourself to become this.
Yeah.
But this is safe. This is reducing risk and protecting. And that's what we do. We protect ourselves from the fears that we've experienced when we were kids, when we were growing up, when things happened to us. And most of those connect back to not belonging to a group, being rejected for something, being ridiculed, getting into that feeling of shame, that we then go, whatever happens, I don't want to feel that again.
Yeah.
And so in this situation, which my brain says is very similar to that situation, which is there's a group of people on a level surface mingling around, feels like the playground, I'm going to protect myself from ever feeling that again.
Yeah. So I'm guessing from the way you're talking about this that I'm not the first person whose obstacle in showing up was this kind of primal fear.
No, it's in all of us. This is the challenge that we face, is that we want to belong. We fear rejection. At some point, we've experienced some form of rejection, some form of ridicule, some form of shame. And that, however that showed up for us, will create some conditions that our brain says this could happen in this situation. And we conform. We look at the environment and we go, okay, what is the safest thing that I can do? And this is why, of those three styles, fitting in is the most dominant, but it's also the most dangerous, because it's the one where we become invisible. And when we become invisible, we don't feel like we're being noticed anymore. We get overlooked for promotion, we get overlooked in conversation. We don't think our points matter. We don't think anyone's noticing what we're saying anymore. We become defined by title, and we feel hollow, and we feel lonely. And so this thing that we've gravitated towards for safety isn't actually protecting us. It's now making us vulnerable. Where do you go now when you've given up who you are to stand out for fear of being cut down, to then go into this corner and become invisible? And so that for me, this is what this conversation, this work is all about, is exactly the conversation we've just had, which is bringing awareness to it and going, okay, why in these specific situations do I behave like that? What is that behavior? Does that behavior serve me? And is it serving the people around me? And in your networking situation, it's not. It doesn't serve you, and it doesn't serve the people. So now why am I doing that? And now how can I adjust that?
Okay.
Then you can show up on purpose. And that will require some courage. But to your point, you've already rationalized the fear's not in the room. The danger's not in the room. Right? So when we engage our prefrontal cortex and we think this through, we go, isn't this crazy? We're letting our subconscious rule our lives, and our subconscious is making all these decisions to protect us. But when we rationalize that, we can then process it and overcome it. But we don't. We just let our subconscious make all these decisions for us and put up these barriers to protect us. And it's only when we bring conscious thought to this, it's only when we stop, have this conversation, draw awareness to how we're showing up and our behaviors, that then we can make corrections. Then we can show up on purpose.
Yeah, and I imagine, a lot of the work I do with people is sort of the uncourage, which is to say, I don't actually need courage to stand in a room in my fullness. It's a glitch of the brain that makes me think it's scary, right? Like no one is going to bite me on the leg or rake their claws across my face. But actually, like doing it, going out of my way to do it, partly is going to tell my subconscious, oh, this isn't dangerous. Like every time I do it, it reinforces the subconscious going, yeah, look at him waffling on quietly as opposed to standing out. But also having the experience of standing out and realizing I'm not dead can help disconfirm. So how do you help people figure out, how would you help me figure out if there's balloons and juggling? I don't know if you can see the juggling balls behind me on my bookcase.
Signature colours there as well, purple and blue. Could be some signature colours in there.
Oh, okay.
So I think you've already got a clue in that sort of a little study you did around the star and centre of attention. So what we want to work back to is kind of the origin story. So who were you as a child, and what is your story through? What's the timeline through to today to get to an understanding of what has shaped you? How do you show up in the world authentically, truthfully? And so that requires awareness and then acceptance to build on that awareness. And then within that narrative is who is Howie. And within that who is Howie are your signature icons. That's where you get to, actually, I am the nerdy star, right? And the nerdy star is the guy that walks into the room juggling, right? So your signature icon becomes the guy that walks into the room juggling, because that's what the nerdy star does. Now, at the moment, the star is suppressed and nerd is bad. But it might be in your narrative, in your timeline, from going back to the earliest memory you got to where you are now, actually, you can embrace being the nerdy star, because fundamentally that's who you are. And the signature icons that come from that are the things that are uniquely you, that the minute I see that, I go, that's Howie.
Mm-hmm. What came up, this is a really weird thought that I've not shared with anyone ever before, but what came up is, like, my origin story, I think, starts with reincarnation. Like who I kind of was told I was as a kid. And I'm not getting into the metaphysics of this is real or not, but it's certainly like I have the same name as my grandfather, my father's father, whom I never met. He and I are the only left-handed people in the family. and he was a star of the Yiddish theater. Band leader, singer, actor. He was in movies. I have clips of his movies. And as I said, he died, 15 years or so before I was born. But what I got from my father was a kind of a distaste for that lifestyle, about his pathological need for attention and applause, always having to be the center of attention, and how, it's a trivial profession as opposed to something that helps people.
And so what did that narrative from your father tell you about who you, even with or without the reincarnation, the narrative from your father told you that what you were imagining that you could be was wrong?
It was like, oh, you're such a Hambolio, which was sort of like, okay, this is a thing that's sometimes charming, but mostly you need to manage it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so right from there, being a star is a bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's still who you are. So now it's about, how does the star show up? How does the star, the juggling, performing Howie, appear in a way that is authentic and comfortable, because it's fundamentally part of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, which we've discovered now where it is, you were told that was wrong. And so what your subconscious is playing back is, and has looked probably now for multiple years of evidence, is, why is that wrong? So every time something has happened where putting yourself out there, or seeing other people put themselves out there, being the clown, being the star, being gregarious, the brain's gone, look, that person's been cut down. That's bad. See, your father was right. And so the brain has cleverly gone, here's all the evidence why all of that is true. But walking into a networking room in a purple top, juggling two balls, isn't going to kill you, but it's probably who you are. As an extreme version, but that you can already see that origin, both the origin story of your grandfather, who you never met, but I can feel that you can feel who they were in spirit, to a story you were told, to how that feels wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting. I was just thinking back to, like, one of the most fun jobs I ever had, mid-20s, I delivered singing telegrams. I was contracted. And the reason I could do it is that I could play 3 chords on the ukulele, and I could make up basically sonnets for different things, for somebody's 40th birthday party, for a retirement, I would get some details, and I would write poems and make a little song about it. And I'm like, my wife is always amazed when she watches the videos that I put out on YouTube or LinkedIn by how boring they are. she's like, who is this? Like, you're always like laughing when you're doing podcasts. Like, this is, and then it's like, hey there, this is Howie, and what I'd like to talk about today is, I'm like, I don't know. And then, so then I try to get more, gregarious in front of the camera, and then I look like sort of like a constipated walrus. I'd be like, hi there. And it just is cringy. But there was something about, like I'm thinking about all the ways in which it would be more fun to be me, and more fun to share my message and cut through clutter more and stand out, using things that I already have. This is a really fun conversation. I can see how you're such a great, coach and teacher.
Thank you. I'm loving the conversation. I feel like we're having a one-on-one. We are having a one-on-one conversation, but I feel like we are having a one-on-one conversation. And hopefully some other people find this interesting as well. But actually, it doesn't matter, because we're having a good conversation. And you hit the nail on the head there, in that when you find how you show up, you'll stand out. So when that Howie, because this Howie is not the constipated walrus. We're having fun. You're illuminated. You're telling stories. that's you, right? You're showing up and we're having a conversation, but I feel that this is Howie. And then something again happens when there's a camera and there's no one else there. So it's finding a way for the real Howie to show up on that camera as opposed to the Howie you think should show up when you do a video.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because that's the brain going, oh, we're doing a serious video now. I can't be like I was told I shouldn't be.
Mm.
And now we're just having a conversation. We could be sitting down with a glass of wine in a nice little wine bar. None of those pressures exist, even though there might be, if we were doing this live, there might be thousands of people watching it, but we wouldn't be concerned by that because it feels like we're having a conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
But the minute you stare into the camera and you imagine the audience being there, the judgment comes back.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think, I'm differently able to be this, at ease. I think, you're playing a big role, that you're, when I give you a piece of vulnerability, you treat it with care and respect and, give me value back, which encourages me to be more, at ease. There's guests where that's sort of less true. I don't know how noticeable it is because this is my platform and, I feel I'm at home here. I paid for this microphone, as Ronald Reagan once said.
This is your studio. Yeah, I'm the guest. This is your studio. I'm in your house.
But still, yeah, like once that disappears, it's just me and an imaginary audience. And when I think about who I'm imagining watching this, it's like people who knew me when I was 15.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, you faker, what do you know? Or, boy, I expected more from you. I really thought you were, going to do something with your life. And here you are making these videos.
Yeah. And there's the talk track. There's all that playground judgment and all the reasons why you can't be who you are in this moment now because of all those things that happened then.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I reckon if you imagined it was your grandfather.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. If you imagined it was you and your grandfather, and you were doing a video with him, I reckon there'd be a totally different person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
It'd be an interesting exercise to do that, to record something, imagining that you're in the playground and it's your schoolmates watching you record, and you're in a studio and it's your grandfather behind the window watching you record, and then play the two back and see who shows up.
Wow, that's a fun exercise. I've never invited my grandfather into my life, really. Like he's a font of stories, but I've never had conversations with him. I think that's like a really interesting exploration.
I think it's part of your. It's part of your story. It's part of your story because you told it as part of your story. The first place you went to in your origin story was there. So there's no black or white. There's no grey. It's black and white. Your grandfather is in your story, and a big part of your story followed by what you were told by your father that meant. So in those two, within the playground experience, now fast forward to being told you're the star and the center of attention, somewhere in that timeline, there's all the breadcrumbs to make sense of everything. But the grandfather is, without question, part of your origin story.
Wow, it feels really interesting to welcome him in, right? Because he's been a cautionary tale.
Yeah, it's got that little red exclamation mark of warning. There's a little warning triangle, which isn't helping.
Yeah,
it's suppressing. There's so much a good attachment to who he is and what he embodies, but every time that image comes up in the subconscious brain, it comes with that little red warning triangle. And so that's the bit we've got to get rid of, is a little red warning triangle, to then allow that version of Howie and grandfather inspiration to shine through.
Wow. So
I would I would suggest that would be my go-to place in terms of when you said, what can you do to walk into that networking room? That would be my suggestion, is to go through that exercise of grandfather, warning triangle. How do we get rid of the warning triangle to allow grandfather to be the inspiration, to be the Howie who you are when you walk into that networking room?
That's fun. That's fun. And I'm sort of laughing to myself when you say those might be my signature colors, though, sort of light blue, because I went to the juggling shop. I was a amateur juggler in the States, and I got rid of all my stuff. Didn't come here, packed with suitcases. I didn't bring that, but we were walking past and I saw a juggling shop, and I asked my wife to come and pick 3 colors for me that would look nice, because I didn't know. So this is sort of, she says, I think these will look nice together. I get this sort of like a purple, teal, and blue, or something like that.
Yeah, I like the purple. Purple's good. But okay, so let's just rewind.
Okay.
There aren't many people who would go, I was walking past a juggling shop and I had to stop and go in. So again, in your story, this performer, the singing telegrams, can't walk past a juggling shop. I didn't bring my juggling balls, but I couldn't walk past a juggling shop without going in. Yeah. This is your story, right? This is who you are. This is all the stuff that absolutely defines you. Because that's not. I don't think I've ever been on a podcast or in a conversation where someone said, I was walking past a juggling shop and I had to go in. so there's no question that performer and entertainer is part of who you are. Absolutely no question. No one's ever said that. And it's brilliant. It's gold. It's podcast gold right there. It's the opening 2 minutes. I was walking past a juggling shop and I had to go in. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it never occurred to me that that's unusual.
Yeah, because that's who you are, right? And this is where the outside perspective, which I'm bringing now, and your friends bring when they said, no, we see the star in you, you're always the center of attention. Other people see the things we don't see. Mm-hmm. And we do an exercise around superpower. We struggle to find our superpower. In thought leaders, we call it the irony of expertise. The thing we do with others, we find the hardest to do with ourselves because we can't see ourselves the way that other people do. And it's the power of coaching, right? We see in other people what they can't see in themselves. And so you walking past a juggling shop, going into it, you think nothing of it. And I immediately see that makes you different in a really good way. Like for me, that's a really unique, again, signature icon. Those balls are there for a reason. You stopped at that shop for a reason. You went in for a reason. And those reasons are it's you. But you're so used to that. It's so obvious to you in terms of, well, yeah, everyone goes to a juggling shop. It's like, no, they don't. So yeah, that's where the outside perspective is so useful in these conversations when we're trying to discover who we are and how we show up and what do other people see is often a really powerful way to get to the things we can't see.
Right. Now I'm thinking about all the black shirts that I bought because I thought that was my signature color. I'm a little colorblind, so this is the one where I can tell if there's a stain or not.
Okay. Love it. Could be black and purple with a little bit of teal.
I'll have to get a sash or something.
Yes. Yeah.
A bandolier.
Like a winner sort of, which is also very, very showman-esque. Yeah. Mm-hmm. How does, let me ask you a question. We've had quite an interesting conversation, which was, has been unexpected but delightful from my perspective. I really enjoyed where we've gone and where we've explored. How does it feel?
It feels like you've helped me open a gift that I thought was just sort of a box in the closet, but like we dusted it off and it's gift wrapped and it's open and it's got all these fun things in it. Like my mind's going maybe it's the juggling balls, maybe it's not, maybe it's doggerel is a ukulele. I don't know. It just feels like there's a path forward it's very energizing.
Awesome.
Right. Like being me actually, like, and I think about this, like, this is a lot easier and takes a lot less energy than, and I'm not a conformist. Like, no one has ever thought of me as a conformist, but I just never took it to the place where it felt like it was going to be dangerous. Like, I've been in a band, and I would, sing 3 or 4 songs, and I really preferred comic songs because I don't feel like I have a really good voice. And so if I'm delivering comedy, that feels like I'm actually giving a gift. And I love that, but it would never feel safe to do that. It has not felt safe to do that in any other setting. Mm-hmm. Right. But it doesn't take me long to write a little song about something. So I could start doing LinkedIn, song posts.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's part of who you are. Yeah. And we started earlier, we talked about signature icons and finding signature icons. And I said that, I like the concept of personal branding. I hate the execution of it, in the sense that most of the time it sucks. This is where it works. So when we get to that authentic story, which we're starting to get to with your origin story and all the singing telegrams, the comedy singer, the juggling shop, the grandfather's entertainment background, then you get to elements of a brand in terms of colors and icons that are true to you. If we sat down and went, what font could Howie be? What color should have? It's superficial rubbish. And then we go and put it through Photoshop and we create the perfect purple for you, and it has no depth. And the people interact with that feel that it has no depth. It might look beautiful. We might be able to get AI to come up with the most amazing imagery, but it's a representation, a fabrication, as opposed to the conversation we've had, which is now uncovering the true depth that then informs something that when I experience that from you feels right.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I suddenly got pictured like Broadway font. Like, well, that would work for me.
Yeah, because it's got meaning.
Yeah. Because
when someone says to you, why is your font Broadway? Your brain will immediately go, because I'm a performer. Da, 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 da. I design my own trainers. They're always Nike trainers. They're always blue, bright colors, because I worked on the Nike brand. I have a passion for the Nike brand and the Nike story. I'm a colorful person that embraces individuality, so I design my own trainers. So nobody else has a pair of trainers the same as mine, but it has a story to it. The picture behind me has a story to it. The aeroplanes behind me have a story to it. When the story's there, it doesn't matter whether someone gets the story or not. They're just little attachments, like your juggling balls, that mean something. And then if someone inquires, then the depth comes out. But you could put any ornament behind me, but you haven't, which is really interesting.
I haven't what?
Juggling balls. You haven't put any ornament behind you. You put juggling balls.
Well, there's a guitar. Really there's a guitar over here because I mean, partly it's a matter of just logistics. Like I'm glad I'm not a tuba player, because I wouldn't want to schlep that around everywhere.
I was walking past the tuba shop and I just thought I had to go in. That's brilliant.
So, wow. So I have, a bunch of other things I'd love to talk to you about, but I feel like this is sort of a self-contained conversation. So I hope I can invite you back to continue. I do want to talk about at some point this idea of fitting in and kind of holding on to titles and identities that we have outgrown or surpassed or shifted. But I think that's another day.
I would love to do that. I have honestly thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. So we've covered a lot of ground. We've been in some, and thank you for sharing and being so open and so vulnerable, because it's been fascinating exploring this conversation at such a personal level and in such a public way. So thank you. I honestly have loved the conversation, and would love to talk some more.
Oh, good. Well, I'm just thinking, wow, free coaching at the highest level. So lucky me. So for folks,
hopefully we can inspire one or two more people as well.
Well, I imagine that there will be people inspired to find out more about you and follow you. And so could you make an invitation for folks who would like more David Fish?
Absolutely. So I'm on LinkedIn, and if you just look up David Fish in Australia, I'm sure you'll find me. My website's davidfish.com.au for the Australian element. You can send me an email, fish@davidfish.com.au, reach out. I do write a newsletter on LinkedIn called Fitting In and Standing Out, which covers all of this content. And that is essentially me writing the book that I need to write, but I haven't sat down to write a whole book yet. So I'm writing it through posts and releasing it because I think this is such an important conversation. And I think it's such an important time to be having this conversation. So I'm not holding back the content until I can get around to finish a book. So please, reach out, send me a note, connect on LinkedIn. Jump on the website. Love to hear from people.
Fantastic. And I know this is going to help individuals, but when I think about the world and I think about people who are holding back, like ways in which I have been holding back, like, all hands on deck. Like we need everybody, and we need everybody at 100%. So I think this really is holy work.
Yeah, it's time we showed up on purpose because we need to be seen. And we need to be seen for the value that we can bring, and it unlocks us when we feel we can show up on purpose.
Ooh, that might be the headline of the podcast. So, David, thank you so much for all the work you have done, all the thinking, and for really listening to me and giving me these gifts in this past hour. I'm very grateful.
Harry, absolute pleasure. I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and I genuinely look forward to our next conversation.
Cool. Talk to you soon.
Whew. And that's a wrap. You can find the show notes for today's episode at plantyourself.com/590. Movement news came back this past weekend from Lerma, Spain. I didn't even know what Lerma was, but apparently it's a beautiful little town south of Burgos, which I didn't know where that was, except that it's north of Madrid. And Lerma has this amazing architecture, these giant buildings. There's churches and palaces, and for a town that's kind of in the middle of nowhere, just driving and just seeing endless windmills producing electricity and solar farms. Amazing place if you want to go to Spain and go really off the beaten track. Lerma, Lerma. Anyway, the important thing about Lerma was that there were 4 ultimate fields, and we played in second division grass ultimate nationals. I say grass because in Spain there's a lot more beach than grass, thanks to geology. And we did great. We came in 9th out of 12. We won the second pool of the second division, and we lost our 2 games the first day, 10-8 and 15-14. So it could have gone either way. We could have, we could have won it all, maybe. No, watching the finals, it was clear we could not have won it all. But young team, old team, working together, having lots of fun. And as I speak to you now, my thighs are still on fire, but in a good way. I think that's it for this week. I've got a whole bunch of conversations queued that I know already are great. So I hope you'll keep tuning in. And it'd be great if you could tell one other person about this podcast. I kind of am itching to grow my influence. David Fish helped me see that there's stuff here that maybe the world could benefit from. So if you want to be part of helping me grow that, tell 1 or 2 people to check out the Plant Yourself podcast. I'd really appreciate it. All right, that's all for this week. As always, be well, my friends.